Dear guests also on Zoom. I noticed on Zoom are several Rotarians from other clubs as well. Welcome, dear Rotarian friends. Why are we here today? For the presentation, Reducing Recidivism in Colorado. Our Boulder Rotary Club member, District Attorney Michael Dougherty, who we welcome heartfully to be present today, thank you for being here, presented in February 2023 here to us an alarming statistic for the decade ending 2020. The 3-year recidivism rate in Colorado was approximately 45%, which means, in other words, 45% of incarcerated persons released from prisons are back within the next 3 years. Colorado ranks in the upper third of states for recidivism rates. Imagine the outrage if a heart surgeon had a 45% failure rate, or an investment advisor lost clients' retirement funds 45% of the time. It's unacceptable. What can be done to reduce this level of recidivism and create hope for these persons? At that time, in February, during the presentation of Michael, our district attorney, that then relatively new Boulder Rotary Club member, John Culkin, was sitting by pure coincidence on the same table with me. I didn't know him at that time. And he said, can we have coffee this week? What can we do as Rotary? The rest is history. We are here to hear the presentation from Stacey Putka, founding member, co-founding member, and executive director of Breakthrough Colorado Alliance. Please give a warm welcome to Stacey.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I used to speak at Rotary clubs all the time, and it's been a while, so I'm really glad to be back at these roots. As Alessandra mentioned, my name is Stacey Putka, and I'm the executive director of Breakthrough, a local Colorado nonprofit that prides itself on transforming the lives of people with criminal histories. Recently, I was on a hike with some friends, and being Boulder residents, I imagine you can all relate to all of the feelings that come with going on a hike. You reach the summit, and you feel this tremendous sense of personal accomplishment, and as you look out at the endless blue skies and the rolling hills, you're struck with this sense of freedom, of possibility, of hope. But for the millions of Americans who have been involved in the criminal legal system, that feeling lies just outside of their reach. For example, my own father battled with addiction, and it led him down a dark path, one that he was able to fight his way out of, to climb up to his own summit, as a result of personal hard work and community support. I grew up with a father who taught me that no one's future must be defined by their past. He was my first teacher in redemption and in resilience, teaching me that second chances really matter. It was my experience with my father that led me to become a clinical therapist for people who are experiencing symptoms of mental illness and substance use disorders. One of my clients struggled with such severe depression that he struggled to find the will to live, let alone to find a job, which was one of his parole requirements. He was returned to prison, not because he was a threat to our community, but because our society did not know how to support him. I saw the system prioritize punishment over rehabilitation time after time. This experience, and too many others like it, sparked my passion for criminal justice reform and encouraged me to think about solving this problem differently. That's why we started Breakthrough. We believe in the power of human potential. Our mission is to break these harmful cycles of incarceration through education, reentry support, and giving people a chance to rewrite their own stories so that no one's future has to be defined by their past. Remember the story I told at the beginning about the hike and that feeling of freedom and possibility? Two of the friends I was on that hike with, I met in the complete opposite setting, inside a prison, enshrouded in concrete walls and barbed wire. One of them, on the very far end over there, that's Jason, I met in 2017. When I met him, he was serving a life sentence. And I never thought I would get to see him in the community. I've got my remote in my pocket. Today, he is our programs and services manager at Breakthrough. He's been restored to our community not only as a fantastic employee, but as a husband, as a son, as a brother, as a religious leader, and as a criminal justice reform advocate. His story does not have to be the exception. This can be possible for everyone who returns home, if only they are given the opportunity. Jason once told me that Breakthrough changed his worldview, that we connected him to community and opportunity, not from a savior's mindset, but because Breakthrough believed in him and in his peers. It is this belief that allows Breakthrough to serve as a bridge between people impacted by the criminal legal system and the broader community. It's the belief that no one's past has to define their future. And that belief allows people to have a worldview that is not narrowed by concrete walls and barbed wire, but to have a worldview where they're standing on their own personal summit, looking out at the endless opportunities and possibilities for their own life. At Breakthrough, we're working together to break through to a better tomorrow for all people. So I've told you a little bit about why we do what we do. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we do what we do. Someday, just so you guys know the long-term vision, we would like to be able to provide our programs and services to every single person who's incarcerated within the Colorado Department of Corrections. We currently work inside 6 facilities, which has been made possible by the generous grant provided by the Boulder Rotary Club. We expanded into our 6th facility this year. Our program model is similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you guys have heard of that. So we start kind of flipped upside down. While people are incarcerated, they have housing, they have food, they have clothing, they have access to health care. All of their basic needs are met. So we can dive deeper into their own personal narrative, into how they've made decisions and choices in their life at the top of this pyramid in self-actualization. We work with people while they're incarcerated, and then when they come home, the pyramid kind of flips. We have to focus on housing again, on transportation, on food security, on clothing. And we help people rebuild that foundation when they return to our communities so that we can move back up towards self-actualization through career and job support services. We have 4 main components to our programs and services. The first one is the challenge. So this is our in-facility career readiness program. We work on soft skills, character development, career readiness, reentry planning, and the entrepreneurial mindset. The really important thing about the entrepreneurial mindset is we're not expecting that everyone starts a business. Our entrepreneurial curriculum is actually Colorado State University's Entrepreneurship 101 course adapted for an in-prison environment. So similar to how we don't expect all business students to come out and start a business day one out of college, we don't expect our participants to either. But we expect them to think like an entrepreneur, to get in the shoes of other people and think empathetically about how to solve problems. And we find there's a lot of power in that. People can have any charge type and any sentence length when they're involved in our program. Jason is the perfect example of why. I told you when I met him in 2017, he was serving a life sentence, and now he's in our community. If it wasn't for Breakthrough, he wouldn't have had an opportunity to participate in any other programs or services. So we have an in-facility alumni program called The Transformation. Once people graduate from the challenge, we have quarterly events to continue their own personal character development, career readiness, or entrepreneurial mindset. When people get released, they participate in the return, which is our care management services. We shift at this point from programs that are very structured to individualized one-on-one care, where we're learning what people need to be successful and directly addressing and understanding those needs. We have 7 stability factors that we focus on: housing, transportation, clothing, food, access to mental health care and physical health care, identification, and additional vocational support. So once people have met all of those stability factors, they move into the exemplar, which is our final career development phase. Our approach for employment is what we call an ABC model: an any job, a better job, and a career. So they get their any job in the return phase, and then they move into the better jobs and the careers post-release. A huge part of how we're able to make that possible is by shifting the mindsets of employers, by doing work like this. I'm sure we've got a couple business owners in the audience, and my hope is that you might consider thinking about hiring someone with a criminal history. What we've been doing has been working. We've been doing this work since 2018, and our recidivism rate is 6%. 94% of our people have remained free. People who enroll in post-release services are even more likely to remain free. We've only had one person, which is 1% of our people, return to incarceration after enrolling in those post-release services. Right now, the state of Colorado reports that their recidivism rate is 37%. That is from 2020, which is, as we all know, the year of COVID, which is when they were trying to send less people back to prison. So we anticipate that that will rise in future years. We've served almost 300 people. We've graduated 11 cohorts, and 91% of all of our participants are employed post-release. We calculate, before I move on to volunteering, that our reduction in recidivism has saved the state of Colorado over $23 million. So the investment that the Rotary Clubs have been able to make of $25,000 has a tremendous return. So you guys should all feel really proud of that, and I feel really grateful for that as well. A huge component of our program is volunteering. In that 32-week challenge program I mentioned, we have 4 major milestone events where we bring in volunteers from the community, just like you. So this is the part where your ears should perk up. If you want to think about how you can get involved and make an impact, this is how. We have a kickoff event, which is at the very beginning of our program. That day is purely focused on community building and empathy. We do an empathy building exercise called Step to the Line, and we show our participants and the community the humanity that exists between the two populations so that we can all work to move forward this cause together. Our second event is called a mock interview day, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Our participants have their resumes ready. They have a breakthrough statement, which is how they have practiced disclosing their criminal history to a potential employer. And they do one-on-one mock interviews with volunteers from the community. We also have a business pitch boot camp. So once our participants start the entrepreneurial portion of the curriculum, they have 4 weeks focused on business ideation. And at Business Pitch Boot Camp, they share their business idea with people from the community. And the volunteers help give them feedback on their business pitches so they can present them at the end of the day. Very similar to how I'm standing up here right now. The participants stand up in front of the audience at the end of the day after they've received coaching from the volunteers, and they pitch their businesses. The volunteers then decide which businesses are the most viable in the current market. We select those teams, and then the participants form teams around that business idea. That is what they stay in for the remainder of the program, and our last event is a business pitch competition and a graduation ceremony. We have volunteers come in again, they judge the business pitch competition, deciding which one is the best, and celebrate in the graduation ceremony. There's a few different specific skill sets, right, that come up throughout these 4 events. The first is the ability to connect, period. The second is the ability to ask someone questions and then give them feedback on how you think their answers were. The third is to evaluate businesses based on your own experiences. So that can be as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, or as a consumer of products. You consume things all day, every day. And the last is to choose your favorite business idea. I think a lot of times people are intimidated because they feel like they don't have the right skill set or the ability to volunteer, to offer people things. And hopefully that description made you feel like you can, because every single person who comes in makes a tremendous impact. You don't have to have started your own business. If you have, that's great. That's additional benefit. But the ability to connect and give feedback is really what we're looking for in these volunteer scenarios. Here's the 4 events. This is my father-in-law. He comes and volunteers all the time. We have a lot of fun together. And I'm going to play you guys a quick video about volunteering from our volunteers so you can hear it directly from them. Maybe. Thanks, Dan.
One of the most significant breakthroughs that I had was when a person on the inside gave me a shout out and thanked me for showing up as a regular volunteer. He didn't have any family and considered me as a volunteer as part of his family, and just really understanding the significant impact that I had was truly an incredible experience.
Just seeing what support means to them, I can't tell you how many times they would say, why are people like you coming in to spend time with people like us? And just they appreciated the fact that we were there, the fact that we showed our humanity and our caring and love, really. I think it just all came across, and that was a wonderful thing to experience, it really was.
This is a tremendous well of human spirit that's available to us to get into, and that doesn't really exist on the outside like that. You know, so to be able to go one place and fill yourself up with that kind of spirit is just extraordinary.
Just give it a try. I went in so skeptical, thinking that I would be one and done, and now I've continued to volunteer with this organization for several years. It has absolutely changed my worldview. I think it's given me back more than it's given to the program participants.
We don't need that one. So that is my talk for you guys today. What questions do we have? Thank you, Alessandro. I appreciate the applause.
Are there other programs in Boulder that are doing similar things?
So there's a slight distinction. Boulder has a county jail, Jail is where you go when you've been charged with a crime, and while you're waiting for sentencing or to serve maybe a short duration of a sentence. The prisons are where people are transferred to once they have been sentenced to a longer period of incarceration. So in Colorado, all of the prisons are located pretty rurally. The ones we work in are in Canyon City, Ordway, and Pueblo. There's also prisons down by Grand Junction, in Rifle, and Delta, in Sterling, in Buena Vista. So there's not a organization in Boulder that does the same work inside prisons that we do. However, I'm sure there are programs and services available at the Boulder County Jail that they provide services inside the jail and then work with people post-release.
Sure. Yes, there actually is the reentry initiative in Longmont.
There we go.
But my question is, what is your total budget? I know the Rotary clubs are giving you some money. I'm sure you have a much larger budget. And can you talk about how you're providing housing for people? And also, what about people who have addiction issues? And what kind of therapy and what kind of resources do you have for those individuals?
Yeah. So our total budget this year was just under $1 million. Next year, it's projected at about 1.5. We secured recently a grant through the Department of Labor called the Pathway Home Grant, which is $2.7 million over the next 3 years. So I have $700,000 for next year secured through the Pathway Home Grant. In terms of housing, it really is dependent upon the individual. Because we work with people in the facilities, they could return anywhere, into other states, to rural Colorado, to Denver. And so we really need to understand where people want to live post-release. And then we work to create relationships with housing partners. And it can be as small as an individual renter. Like, we have volunteers come in who rent out condos and they sign up to be housing providers. Or as broad as working with organizations that, like Second Chance Center is another reentry organization in Denver that has a large unit of housing. So we build relationships and then we can plug people in depending on where they want to go. For addiction or mental health support services, we work to understand the level of care that someone needs and then match them with a community-based organization that provides that level of care. So one of our partners is Hazelbrook Recovery, and that's a residential treatment facility that we'll send people to. There's another nonprofit in Denver called The Other Side Academy, which is a 2-year residential program for men who are experiencing addiction. So we understand what people need, and then we provide connections to community organizations. We truly believe that we cannot do it all, and we shouldn't. And so we find partners who are doing things really well, and then we connect our participants to those people post-release.
Thank you. Couple quick questions. So is there a vetting process that you use to figure out who was an appropriate participant in your program, or is it self-selected?
So it is a little bit of both. It's always self-selected. It is very important to me that our participants choose to be in the program. When I was a therapist, I did mandated therapy for too many years. And it's really, really difficult to encourage someone to change when they don't want that for themselves. So first and foremost, our program is voluntary. Second, we work with the correctional facilities to kind of do the vetting process. The standard is we want to make sure that they're safe to be in the room. So at different facilities, that means different things. We work at Colorado State Penitentiary, which is a maximum security facility, and people are usually sent there on what the Department of Corrections likes to call a turnaround. So they have behaved inappropriately in other facilities and are sent there to kind of get their act together. So they have a shorter duration of time since an incident that they need to be safe for before they're eligible for a program. We also work at Skyline Correctional Facility, which is the complete opposite. There's no fence. The participants meet us in the parking lot and help us unload the car, which is very exceptional. And they have been incident-free for years and years and years. So there's a longer period of time that they need to be safe in order to be eligible for the program. So we collaboratively decide that with the facilities. What is also true is everyone who is interested in the program sends what they call a kite. It's like a note inside correctional facilities to the facility point of contact, and they get on our list for that kickoff event, the first event that I talked about. And we spend all morning with them talking about what the program is going to help them with, what their expectations can be from us, what our expectations are of them, and then we give them a moment to choose. You can stay in this room and you can commit, and if you choose to commit, we'll commit to you. But if you don't want to commit to this, there's the door. And we've never actually had anyone leave.
Stop when he gets here.
Question?
Not sure what that is. Sorry.
That's okay. But that was the end of what I was going to say, so that's perfect.
Perfect. We got a question right here.
Thank you. I was vacationing in Germany last week, and I happened to read in the newspaper that their 5-year recidivism rate is 20%. And they don't have any, they're all state-run. They don't have any private prisons. So my question is there a difference when you're working with a prison operated by, Prison Corporation of America and an actual, federally operated prison?
Yeah, definitely. Colorado has 2 private correctional facilities. One is in Crowley, and we actually don't work with them yet. We might change that, but right now we've been working on building the relationship with the Colorado Department of Corrections, and there's 16 prisons within their system, so there's plenty of work to do. I'm not opposed to working inside private prisons because I think that they could probably pay us, and the state right now does not pay us to do this work, but it is interesting because private prisons are incentivized financially to have people incarcerated, right? So I don't know how motivated they are to have programs and services that make people less likely to be incarcerated. But I hope to be proven wrong one day and to be asked by a private corporation to go and provide services inside their facilities.
Thank you so much for this amazing talk. It's very inspirational, and thank you again. I want to ask, do you typically see that most of these people who you're helping, do they want to make that change before they enter the program more, or do you see it sort of happen during the program where you can see the big sort of changes happening?
Yeah, so the therapist in me will tell you about the stages of change. So there's pre-contemplation, which is also called denial. There's contemplation where you're like, maybe I should change. There's preparation, there's planning, then there's action, and then there's maintenance. So I would say most people, when they choose to come to the program, are at least in pre-contemplation, where they're like, I don't want to be in prison anymore, so I want to learn something different. And then the program helps get them through those stages of change, more into preparation and planning and action. And it's really cool to see, like, if you guys come and volunteer at a kickoff and then come back to that same facility for a future event, if you went all the way to graduation, the transformation that happens from the beginning to the end is exponential.
It's my understanding that the incarcerated population, there's a high percentage that are illiterate or have low literacy skills. Are you finding this in the group that you work with? And if so, what do you do about it?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of people in the program who will tell us, when I first came to prison, I couldn't read. In fact, Darius, one of our men who has the most beautiful handwriting I've ever seen, could not read or write when he became incarcerated. Our program requires at least a 6th grade reading level. The good thing is the facilities have GED education inside of them that that can help people gain the literacy and the writing skills that they need in order to participate in our program. So we require that people have a GED or are enrolled in GED programming in order to participate in our program, and that's less from a requirement standpoint and more from a incentivizing standpoint, where we want people to access the services that are available to them inside. Again, like I was mentioning over here, we can't do everything. We don't have a program right now that teaches people how to read, but the Department of Corrections does, and they have teachers who do that. So we want to encourage people to leverage the supports that already exist for them.
I'm not sure if this is an easy answer, but you said that Jason was serving a life sentence and now he's out. So I'm very curious as to how that happened.
Well, I'm always cautious of how I share Jason's story because it's his story first and foremost. Second, most people that we work with do not have this circumstance. So Jason was actually innocent of the crime that he was serving time for when I met him. He had committed a burglary prior to, so he had a record, and then he was accused of this other charge, was found guilty and was wrongly incarcerated for that. The Corey Wise Innocence Project, actually out of Boulder, helped get Jason out. So he, innocent, and that's why.
Yes. Do you have any relationship with Boulder County Jail? And do you do anything with like short-term domestic abuse types of people who are maybe released after a very short time?
Yeah.
I've experienced people who are released from the jail that have absolutely no support, no family, no legal support, and I wondered if there's any service like that available.
Yeah. The jail population is very transient. You can be in jail for just a few hours, just a few days. Our program is 32 weeks. Jason just created a shortened version, a 12-week program that we're going to deploy inside the prisons. We have found that to be our niche, our special, where we can make the most impact is with that prison population. But if there was funding available and we had the right opportunity to scale, I'm not opposed to providing services inside jails. But there are, like we mentioned, Reentry Initiative, there's other organizations who do that as well. So I think for now, we're going to focus on the prison population.
Thank you, Stacey. I think, so we have a couple of questions on Zoom, and we're going to call on Matt to unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Oh, have I had that terrible shadow on my face the whole time?
No, you look
Maybe this is better. I hate podiums. It feels like it removes me from the people, but.
Matt Elston. No? Okay. Well, we have John Rieger. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question, John?
Just wondering, does the program work with youth offenders?
We do not work with youth offenders yet. The Department of Corrections has a youth offender services facility in Pueblo that is also managed by the same warden that manages the women's facility that we work in there. We would love to do that someday, but we have, funding and scaling issues, but currently we do not. It is interesting though, our age is getting progressively, like our median age is getting younger and younger as we continue to do this work. We do have a couple 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds in our program at Centennial Correctional Facility this year.
Great. We also have another question online from Mike Simpson. Mike, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I'm curious whether or not you work with folks who've been released to, say, halfway houses, or maybe who were released without having worked with you beforehand.
So right now, the two circles that were on the slides, the return and the exemplar, are only available for people who've gone through our program inside, because we're doing those warm handoffs to employers and to other community partners, and so we want to make sure they have that baseline from the services that we provide inside the facilities. We did recently start a support group, however, called Circle of Hope that happens once a week, and anyone is eligible eligible to attend Circle of Hope. Jason and our reentry specialist, Alexis, are there weekly, and so they help provide some light kind of resource navigation services in addition to the work they do with those people in that group.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to go to Rich.
Thank you, and it's just a quick one. So what would be the time commitment for volunteers?
It is a full day, and the locations are far away.
1 day every...
One day, you can come once and never again. So it's not a long-term recurring commitment. The events usually start around 9 a.m. and we're trying to wrap up now around 2:30 so that you can get back on the road before Denver traffic. So you're looking at leaving Boulder at like 6 and getting home probably around 6 as well. But you can carpool with a friend. And you can listen to your favorite book or podcast. You can just sit in silence, which is really nice sometimes too. So I'm a big car trip person, and if you are too, then it's a really, really wonderful experience. And if you're not, it's worth it anyway, because it is some of the most impactful volunteering that you will ever do.
So Stacey, I have the honor of thanking you at the end of the presentation, and Alessandro and John, I want to start by thanking the two of you for making this presentation possible. My attendance this year has not been as good as in past years because of the King Soopers trial. And I will say during the trial, it was a real highlight to get an email from Alessandro and John that based on the presentation from last year, they had connected with Breakthrough, and that Stacey was going to be coming here today to talk about her work. I do want to just mention a couple of quick things. First, that Alessandro and John took this need that we have in the state of Colorado and ran with it and connected with Breakthrough and brought Stacey here today. Can you just join me in giving Alessandro and John a round of applause? And then as we wrap up this part of today's lunch, and I'm going to have better attendance in the future, especially if you arrange for me to win the raffle every time I come. Stacey touched on two things that I want to follow up on as we wrap up. First, private prisons. There are 2 in the state of Colorado. They should be banned. We should not have companies making a profit off the justice system and making a profit by keeping people incarcerated for longer by failing to invest in successful rehabilitation efforts such as Breakthrough. Those private prisons should be banned today and no longer allowed in the state of Colorado. And as someone who has the honor of serving as district attorney, I appreciate that in Boulder County, we're always looking to be innovative, to be leaders, but also to uphold and preserve public safety. And when I look at the rate of failure for people coming out of the prison system, it instills in me such hope when I hear things like Stacey's program with Breakthrough. It's exactly where we should be investing our resources and our energy as a state. First, as compassionate people, I know we are as Rotarians, but second, in an effort to make our communities better and stronger. So if you share valid concerns that I have about public safety and community well-being, focusing on people coming out of prison is exactly where we should put our energy. Because for each one of those people, unless they're convicted of murder in the first degree, short of that, all of the people who go to prison are coming back to our communities. So whether it's a matter of compassion or just the vested interest we all have in safe communities, programs such as Focus Reentry in Boulder and the Reentry Initiative, but also Breakthrough, which is doing incredible work at the state prison level, I think is exactly what we want to do in Boulder County and beyond. So Stacey, we really appreciate you, your energy, your passion, and your experience. I'm so glad that Alessandro and John connected with you. And as a Rotarian, I now have the honor of officially thanking you for being here today. So in your honor, Stacey, the Boulder Rotarian Club is pleased to contribute 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you all so much.